here or not. Connected to their Wi-Fi. Let's see. They've just refurbished the gallery recently, so I think it will be hopefully a little bit more modern than other museums we went to in terms of the gallery. Yeah, I think this is one of the probably the most famous portraits that they have here in collection. Not portrait. Is it a portrait or a? It is. Thank you. Your name threw me off the other day. I was like, it is? Is it our it is or not? With the unicorn. Wild, hello, hello. Let's hope the internet connection holds up. Tiziana, привет. Magandan, Magan. Okay, let's see. We are on floor 3. On this floor, you will find the earliest portraits in the collection from Tudors to Queen Victoria. You will meet fascinating people in local, national, and global settings. Today, most people own family portraits, but these were quite rare before the invention of photography. Most of the portraits in this gallery show individuals who made a mark in public life, but we do have some of the earliest family group portraits painted in Britain. As is the case today, when family photographs are common, these images celebrate people's relationships, values, and lives, and emphasize continuity between generations. An early family portrait. The Tudor portraits. King Henry VI. This is King Edward IV. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze now. Excellent. King Richard III by a known artist. King Richard III was able and ambitious, but his rule lasted little more than 2 years. He was killed at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Richard was buried without ceremony in a friary in Leicester. In 2012, his body was discovered beneath a car park. Oh, this is the guy. The skeleton spine was curved due to scolistics, which may have made one of Richard's shoulders slightly higher than the other. Oh no, scoliosis, okay. This portrait was likely made in the same studio as the images of Henry VI and Edward IV displayed nearby. Okay. So there is an interesting story with the remnants of this king. He was indeed discovered underneath the car park in Leicester, and it was actually an amateur archaeologist who did the research, and they thought that from like different facts they pieced together that the body of Richard III was under a car park, and then it took them quite a bit of time to convince council and everybody and the other funds to actually do the archaeological excavations on the site, and lo and behold, they actually found a body from the 15th century. Hello, Badan. Hello, Merci, thank you. Cheers. Oh, this is a portrait of Thomas Cromwell. Remember the first and the only tyrant in the history of the UK, and the guy who was posthumously executed because of his treason. Oh no, that's not him. Actually, sorry, take it back. This is Thomas Cromwell, and the guy I was talking about was Oliver Cromwell, the guy who was posthumously executed. This is Thomas More. Remember, there's like a place near across from the Battersea where there's a statue to Thomas More, and I think this is King Henry the Eighth. Is it the guy who had six wives? Sabine, hello. And here they go, actually. There's like I'll go a little bit further because there's this is Catherine Parr. One of his wives. This looks like Queen Elizabeth I. Sabine, merci. Thank you. And these are probably all her favorites. Oh no, this is Sir Francis Drake, the explorer. There's a portrait of him, I think, in the National Gallery as well. Hence why she's holding the globe under his right arm. This is William Cecil, Elizabeth I's longest standing advisor. She appointed him Secretary of State at her accession in 1558, and he served the Queen for nearly 40 years until his death. And Elizabeth nicknamed him her spirit. A dedicated Protestant, Cecil was nonetheless acutely aware of the risks that religious change posed to the country's social order and relations with other European powers. For many years, he advocated that Elizabeth should marry. He hoped that an heir would secure the Protestant succession in England, and that a marriage alliance would strengthen England against potential attacks from Catholic Spain and France. Hey Petra, hello Natalia, привет. This is Sir Francis Walsingham. Okay, so this entire wall, by the looks of it, is portraits of the people associated or contemporaries of Elizabeth I. Francis Walsingham was Elizabeth I's principal secretary. He has been credited as the founder of the Secret Service in England. Okay. The forefather of Tanya. A committed Protestant who looked to neutralize Catholic threats to Elizabeth's rule, he ran a network of double agents and spies that stretched as far as Russia. Walsingham believed that Elizabeth's Catholic cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, posed an existential threat to the country. He exploited the Babington plot of 1586 to assassinate Elizabeth, employing code breakers to read Mary's letters, waiting until Mary incriminated herself. This provided the evidence that convinced Elizabeth to order Mary's execution. This was around the time when England was sort of like ruled by Catholic kings, but also by a Protestant. I think Henry VIII turned himself Protestant. He broke away from the Catholic Church so that he could get a divorce from his Spanish queen and marry the others. So that's when the church went to reform, like the Church of England became independent from the papal Rome. Tunde, hello. Heinrich de 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. I don't know. How do you say it? Oite. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, Edith. This is King Edward VI. Oh, did I take a picture of it? Thomas Cranmer. Thomas Cranmer was the architect of England's break from the Catholic Church, appointed Archbishop of Canterbury. Okay, so this guy must be the first one. The first Archbishop of Protestant England. Hey, dude, thank you. He annulled Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon. Cranmer's 1549 Book of Common Prayer helped to embed Protestantism in England during Edward VI's reign, providing the first uniform service of worship in England. After Mary I's accession and England's return to Catholicism, Cranmer was tried for treason alongside Lady Jane Grey. He initially recanted his Protestant beliefs, but dramatically renounced his actions on the day he was burned at the stake as a heretic. Oh my. And lit his life on fire. Just take a picture. Okay, the Reformation and Christianity in crisis. This is like the whole 16th century, with the Dutch going Protestant probably as well. In the 16th century, Christianity splintered into the Catholic and Protestant churches. This religious revolution, known as the Reformation, had a fundamental impact on people's lives and the national identity of states across Western Europe. In England, Henry VIII's desire to divorce Catherine of Aragon aligned with calls for religious reform. Stating that this realm of England is an empire, the 1533 Act of Restraint in Appeals swept away the Pope's authority. To establish the legal foundation of the Reformation in England, Henry VIII's children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, each drove religious change in different directions during their reigns. By the end of the Tudor period, England had been transformed from a Catholic country into a Protestant one. Yeah. I was talking to a friend, and there's an interesting, how do you say it? An interesting relationship between religious reform and the prosperity of the countries. So in Europe, a lot of the countries that became Protestant have historically done better economically than the ones that have remained under the Catholicism. So like if you take England, Netherlands, and probably, I don't know, parts of Germany, is Germany Catholic? They are economically in the current era and historically were better off than the countries that remained Catholic, like Spain and Portugal and whatnot. because I think the Protestantism inspired different values, or like inspired a little bit more of economic freedom. Okay, so this person is Sir Walter Raleigh. Let me read out to you who he was. An ambitious soldier and sailor who made his name during English military campaigns in Ireland, Walter Raleigh used his skills as a poet to gain Elizabeth's first favor. After receiving a royal patent of colonization in 1584, Raleigh organized expeditions to establish the first English settlements in North America on Roanoke Island. However, war with Spain prevented supply voyages and the colonies were abandoned. Raleigh wears Elizabeth's preferred colors of black and white. The emblem of the moon commanding the water evokes his relationship with the queen. She called him Water, while he praised her as the goddess of the moon. This is this guy, Walter Raleigh. Okay, hello. Yes, guys, I'll take a picture of the sign. Yes, this Tanya, hey. So this is Sir Henry Unton. And in this unusual memorial portrait, the diplomat Henry Unton is flanked by depictions of his life, death, and funeral. Beginning in the lower right corner, Unton is shown in various scenes as an infant, a scholar at Oxford University, a traveler in Padua and Venice, a soldier in the Low Countries. So Padua and Venice, probably independent republics or cities at the time, and then lower countries as Netherlands in current era, an ambassador in France, and hosting banquets and performances at his home. So this is all lower corner here. In composing the image, the artist, who was possibly the herald Richard Scarlett, chose to include a cross-section of Tudor society, offering a glimpse of the people in Unton's life whose likeness were probably never recorded in portraits. Oh, look. Oh, yeah, there's they actually signposted it. Oxford, Padua, Venice, Low Countries, so Netherlands, France. Yeah, it's all there. Who is this guy? Sir Philip Sidney. That sounds familiar, this name. Let's check it out. So Sir Philip Sidney was a moral courtier, a soldier, diplomat, and poet who many hoped would become a unifying leader for Protestants across Europe. In 1586, he was wounded in the leg while supporting Dutch rebels in the Netherlands and died from gangrene nearly 4 weeks later. His death triggered an outpouring of public grief, with 700 people processing with his body to St. Paul's Cathedral. The Latin motto, which may have been added to the portrait after Sidney's death, translates as "Fame will tell the rest." Sidney's reputation as a poet was secured by the posthumous publication of his works, including Arcadia, 1590. Okay, the Latin motto is here. Let's see. Oh no, this is like Philip. Catera Fama. I think that's the Latin motto they're referring to. Oh look, this is a famous one. I think this is the one you'll see in the movie, or in a lot of movies about Elizabeth I. See, there's quite a few people around there, so I'll tell you a little bit more afterwards. Oh, this is Mary, Queen of Scots. Lived between 1542 and 1587. Actually, quite a long life. How many? 45 years. Well, for that time. Mary became Queen of Scotland as an infant. She married the heir to the French throne, becoming Queen of France in 1559. However, she was widowed aged only 18 years old. Mary returned to Scotland but was forced to abdicate and flee to England in 1568 after her second husband was murdered, and she married a man who had been implicated in his death. As a great-granddaughter of Henry VII, Mary was key to Catholic attempts to remove the Protestant Elizabeth I. After years of imprisonment, she was executed when evidence was found of her involvement in a plot to assassinate Elizabeth. Like, this is a pretty well documented rivalry in a lot of movies. So yeah, I think they were sisters or something like that. They were cousins. Elizabeth I and Mary, Queen of Scots. Let's read about the Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I was 25 years old when she was crowned in 1559. She was England's second queen regent, and at her coronation she wore the robes that had been made for her half-sister Mary 5 years earlier. This stylized portrait derives from the imagery used in legal documents. Elizabeth's loose hair echoes the style worn by the queen's consort during coronations, but unlike them, she also holds the orb and the scepter to symbolize her personal authority as queen regnant. This painting may have been produced for one of the annual celebrations of Elizabeth's accession, which took place on 17th of November throughout her reign. Imagine going to oh yeah. Well, apparently the gowns of the ladies were made quite, like, the reason why they were so wide was to let them go to the loo without being like others noticing in the different corners of like palaces like Versailles. I think that was they were not very hygienic back in the day. I mean, probably like the aristocrats probably even took the bath once a month or like once a week, if they were lucky. Okay, the ideal courtier. Let's see, hold on, who does this one pertain to? In the 16th century, power was disseminated through the royal court, with courtiers vying for the rewards that could be gained through the monarch's favor. The model for the ideal courtier came to England from Italy and Baldassare Castiglione's 1528 book, Il Cortegiano. It was translated into English in 1561, offering a handbook of the qualities that a courtier needed, which combined nobility and military competence with the demonstration of effortless ability in languages and the arts. During the reign of Elizabeth I, male courtiers competed with each other through the performance of their intimacy with the Queen. Many came from the aristocracy, but there was also the opportunity for outsiders to make their reputation and their fortunes. So this is Sir Henry Lee, I think, a consummate courtier who served 5 monarchs over the course of his life. Henry Lee was Elizabeth I's champion. In this role, he devised the annual jousting tournament that celebrated her accession. This is Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. A friend since childhood, Robert Dudley was the only one of Elizabeth's favorite courtiers to be considered a serious suitor for her hand in marriage. He commissioned numerous portraits of himself. This painting may have been made for the magnificent entertainment that he staged for the Queen at Kenilworth in Warwickshire. Dudley championed Protestantism and led an English expeditionary force in support of the Dutch revolt against Spanish rule in 1585. However, his acceptance of the position of Governor-General of the Netherlands shocked Elizabeth. She ordered him to resign, and he eventually returned to England facing financial ruin. Oh, hello, Jamie. Hey. Let's see what else is here. Portrait miniatures, medallions. There's a later era, a little more sophisticated. Which way shall we go? This way. Okay, Civil War, Republic, and the Return of the King. So this is the times of Charles I and Oliver Cromwell and Charles II. The 17th century was a time of violent political and social upheaval in the British Isles. From 1639 to 1651, a complex series of civil, religious, and national wars, invasions, and rebellions broke out in England, Wales, and Scotland and Ireland. The wars culminated in the execution of Charles I and 11 years of republican rule. When the republic fell apart, the monarchy was restored in 1660 with popular support. King Charles' second reign was characterized by decadence at court and continuing anxiety among the people about the political and religious direction of the country. Cultural and scientific developments was supported by expanding trading opportunities, including those from the newly established slave trading Royal African Company. Okay, let's see who these people are. Okay, this is a Sir Josiah Child, a powerful merchant and director of the Royal African Company from 1675 to 1676. Child, that's his name, was most influential within the East India Company, where he held various important positions, including governor. He gained the company a monopoly for trading in India in the 1680s by paying a £10,000 annual bribe to the king. In India, although official policy was to acquire trading privileges through diplomacy, Charles favored a military approach. He initiated the First Anglo-Indian War, Charles' War, which the British lost. Trading privileges were only restored after the company paid fines and begged the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb for forgiveness. He died enormously wealthy, but almost universally disliked. That's funny. I'll take a picture. Interesting story. Who is this? Louise de Querouaille, Duchess of Portsmouth, with an unknown girl. Louise de Querouaille was a French attendant to Charles II Queen Catherine of Braganza. With the encouragement of the French government, which saw her as a useful political asset, she became the king's mistress. De Querouaille had one son with Charles. She had lavish apartments next to the king's, where she entertained French diplomats and exercised political influence by providing access to Charles. In 1682, she visited France, where this portrait was painted. The identity of the child is unknown. She was probably an enslaved African girl. In 1660, Charles II founded the Company of Royal Adventurers to create a monopoly in the search for gold and ivory in West Africa. Its governor and largest shareholder was James, Duke of York, later King James II. By 1663, now called the Royal African Company, its new charter included the trade in enslaved people. Over the course of its history until 1752, in various forms with various names, it transported more enslaved people to British colonies in the Americas than any other company in the history of the transatlantic slave trade. The Wars of the Three Kingdoms. Okay, let's look. From 1639 to 1651, a series of wars tore apart the three kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland. The wars were sparked by power struggles among the nations and between the English Parliament and the monarchy. Unpopular taxes, the king's autocratic behavior, and disputes about religious freedoms were at the heart of it. More people died as a result of the wars per head of the British population than in any war since. Oh, interesting fact. The victor was the English Parliamentary Army. In 1649, King Charles I was tried, found guilty of tyranny, and executed. 11 years of Republican rule followed, although in 1653, the parliamentary commander Oliver Cromwell was created Lord Protector, a king in all but name. Okay, so this is a portrait of Oliver Cromwell. Lived for 59 years, from 1599 to 1658. The only British head of state not to hold a royal title, Cromwell rose to power from comfortable beginnings after his election as Member of Parliament of Huntingdon. His military leadership, astute politics, and unwavering Puritan beliefs were decisive factors in the victory of the English parliamentary army in the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. Along with 58 other politicians, he signed King Charles I's death warrant in 1649 at the end of the Second English Civil War. He then led the brutal crushing of rebellion in Ireland and the defeat of a Scottish army led by Charles II in 1651. Created Lord Protector in 1653, Cromwell rarely sat for his portrait. His pose and the boy tying his sash are based on earlier portraits of royalist soldiers. This is Prince Rupert of the Rhine, one of the most skillful and popular commanders of the English royalist army during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. Rupert was Charles I's nephew, the third son of Elizabeth, Queen of Bohemia. Hey, Stanko. Okay, I'll show you this one as well. This is Barbara Villiers, Duchess of Cleveland, with her son probably Charles Fitzroy as a virgin and child. She was Charles II's mistress when he was restored to the throne in 1660. She had at least 5 children with him, wielded political influence by facilitating access to him, and was more prominent at court even than the Queen. This must be King Charles. Okay, it is King Charles II. The eldest child of the executed King Charles I, Charles II spent most of his youth in exile on the continent during the Republic. He returned to reclaim his throne amid much rejoicing in 1660, entering London on his 30th birthday. He opened the public theatres after nearly 20 years of closure, and his court became famed for luxury, indulgence, and the prominence of women. He had 14 children with his many mistresses, but none with his Portuguese queen, Catherine of Braganza. Cynical, lazy, and notorious for saying one thing and doing another, Charles was also charming and approachable, and promoted science and technology with genuine interest. This is John Wilmore, 2nd Earl of Rochester. In a court famous for unconventional behavior, the poet Rochester set new standards. His satirical, often pornographic wit and outrageous exploits alternately fascinated and enraged Charles II. The king dismissed Rochester from court at least once a year. His poetry was never intended for publication, and much is lost, but it was both greatly admired and despised in his lifetime and since. It includes amorous lyrics, biting satires, and obscene fantasies. The monkey in Rochester's portrait is a mocking satirical device. It offers a mangled sheet of verses to Rochester, who crowns it with the laurels of a poet. Okay, the restoration of the king. Oliver Cromwell's death in 1658 led to a time of political chaos, which brought the Republican era in Britain to an end. Supported by Parliament, the army, and most of the public, Charles II was invited to return from exile and was restored to the throne. However, initial optimism soon turned to disillusionment. Growing anxiety about Charles's tolerance of Catholicism and friendship with France was accompanied by a series of disasters. Plague in 1665 was followed by the Great Fire of London in 1666, and then the outbreak of war with the Dutch Republic. Charles managed to outmaneuver his opponents and hold the country together, but his death with no legitimate heirs to the throne passed to his brother James, Duke of York, ultimately leading to another revolution. Oh, hello. This is Queen Mary II. She was the eldest daughter of James II and his first wife, Anne Hyde. Mary was married to William of Orange at the age of 15. At first, he was indifferent and she was horrified, but their relationship improved, and as a devout Protestant, she supported William's invasion of England in 1688. Mary was popular both in the Netherlands and in Britain. A wise and effective ruler during William's absences at war, she also led many charitable schemes. This is Arnold Just von Keppel, the first Earl of Albemarle. Keppel was a Dutch courtier who, along with others, accompanied William III from the Netherlands to England in 1688. There was resentment of William's Dutch attendance among the English politicians, but Keppel was charming and popular. A close friendship developed between him and William, especially after the death of Mary II in 1694. Keppel was an able administrator and soldier, and his easy manners were a message to the reserved king. That's a bunch of kids here. Well, what is this period? I need to... Oh, let's read here. I think this is probably where it says what it's all about. Okay, so this is a period between 1685 and 1700. Towards the end of the 17th century, the majority Protestant population in England, Wales, and Scotland increasingly feared a return to Catholic rule. Charles II was succeeded by his Catholic brother James II in 1685. James suspended Parliament when it disagreed with him, and he also placed Catholics in powerful positions. In 1688, a group of British politicians secretly invited James' nephew, the Dutch ruler William of Orange, to invade. His troops met little resistance, and James fled the country. The throne was offered jointly to William and his wife Mary, who was James's daughter. The Bill of Rights of 1689 placed limits on their power and laid down that all future monarchs should, like them, be Protestant.